Hello and welcome to Storytime with Uncle Scotty. Today we have a very kidding. It's just me. It's always me. I am Uncle Scotty, your host for Storytime with Uncle Scotty. It's good. Just been washing my hands, been washing my glasses, making sure that everything is nice and clean. Don't forget to check us out on Patreon if you would like. And don't forget to thank our sponsor, Time. Maybe you can find some time to share with those around you. Maybe it's story time. Time, making stories more flavorful since 1788. Check the history books, it's in there. As you may or may not recall, we are reading some stories from Sideways, stories from Wayside School by Louis Serge. And we've learned about 14 people so far. Actually, 13 people and one dead rat. Don't forget. Let's see what else we have here. Chapter 15, Deedee. This story contains a problem and a solution. Deedee was a mousy-looking kid. Unlike most children at Wayside School, she liked recess better than spelling. As soon as the recess bell rang, she would jump up from her seat and run out the door. There were big signs in Wayside School on every floor that said, "No jumping down the stairs." Deedee never seemed to notice the signs. She jumped down the stairs. Some children took the stairs 2 at a time. Deedee took them 10 at a time. 10 at a time for a dime. 10 at a time for a dime. This was on the way down. It was funny. She never seemed to be in quite the same hurry on the way back up. There was another sign at Wayside School. No cutting across the grass. Deedee must have not have seen that one either. She cut across the grass and ran up to Louis, the yard teacher. "I want a green ball," Deedee said. The green balls were the best. "I'm all out of green balls," said Louis. "Okay then, I want a red ball," said Deedee. The red balls were just about as good as the green balls. They didn't bounce as high, but actually, sometimes you don't want a ball that bounces too high. "I'm all out of red balls too," said Louis. "Do you have anything left?" Deedee meant anything besides the yellow ball. There was one yellow ball at Wayside School, and Louis was always trying to get rid of it. It didn't bounce, and it never went the way it kicked. "Anything at all?" asked Deedee. "Today is your lucky day," said Louis. "I have one ball left just for you, the one and only yellow ball." "No thanks," said Deedee. "Oh, come on, take it," said Louis. "Why don't you ever have any green or red balls?" asked Deedee. "I do," said Louis. "But the other children asked first. By the time you get here, they're all gone." "But that's because I have to come all the way from the 30th story. How do you expect me to compete with the kids from the first or second floor?" she asked. "That's why I saved you the yellow ball," said Louis. "Everybody wanted it, but I saved it just for you." "I'll bet," said Deedee. She took the yellow ball and bounced it on the ground. It stopped dead with a thud. She stepped back, ran up, and kicked it. It went backwards over her head. She didn't even bother chasing it. Instead, she played hopscotch with Jenny and Leslie. She thought it was disgusting. The next day, Deedee asked Mrs. Jules if she could go to recess early. "Why?" asked Mrs. Jules. "So I can get a green ball before Louis gives them all away," said Deedee. "I'm glad you have a good reason," said Mrs. Jules. "Yes, you may go. But first, spell Mississippi for me." Now, spelling was not Deedee's best subject. By the time she finally got it right, she was 5 minutes late for recess. She jumped down the stairs, cut across the grass, and ran up to Louis. There were no green balls left. There were no red balls left either. However, there was still the yellow ball. Deedee played jump rope with Joy and Mauricia. It was no better than hopscotch. So Deedee's problem was to figure out a way to get a green ball, or at least a red ball. You already know that this story also contains a solution. Deedee figured it out. See if you can too. Remember everything you know about Deedee, Wayside School, and Mrs. Jules. Hint. The next day, Deedee brought a cream cheese and jelly sandwich, some nuts, and shredded cheese in her lunchbox. Okay, so here we go. This problem. Deedee's problem is to figure out how to get a green ball or at least a red ball. We know that the problem has a solution. We need to remember everything we know about Deedee, Wayside School, and Mrs. Jules. And the hint is, Deedee brought a cream cheese and jelly sandwich, some nuts, and shredded cheese in her lunchbox. Let's see what happens. Just before recess, Deedee smeared the cream cheese and jelly all over her face. Then she stuffed her mouth with nuts and hung the shredded cheese from her nose. When she closed her eyes, she looked just like a dead rat. Todd was in on the plan. "Mrs. Jules," he called, "there's a dead rat in the classroom." Mrs. Jules was very put out. "I want that dead rat outside immediately." When Mrs. Jules said immediately, she meant it. Deedee found herself outside on the playground. "I want a green ball," she said. Louis pretended he hadn't heard her. "May I please have a green ball?" asked Deedee. Louis gave her a green ball. "I don't know how you did it, Deedee, but you are the first one today," he said. When Mrs. Jules found out that Deedee and Todd had tricked her, she sent Todd home early on the kindergarten bus. Deedee threw the green ball on the ground. It bounced 50 feet straight up in the air, and then she caught it. "You don't like me, do you?" she asked Louis. "Sure I do," said. "Oh, sorry. You don't like me, do you?" Deedee asked Louis. "Sure I do," said Louis. "No, you don't," said Deedee. "Yes, I like you," said Louis. "No, you don't," Deedee insisted. "Yes, I like you, I really do," said Louis. "Are you sure?" asked Deedee. "Yes," said Louis. "Don't you believe me?" "I guess so," said Deedee. "Do you like me?" asked Louis. "You bet," said Deedee. "You're my best friends." "Terrific," said Louis. "I always wanted to be best friends with a dead rat." Chapter 16. DJ. DJ skipped up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jules' room. He was grinning from ear to ear, from nose to chin, from here to there and back again. It's a good song. Here, I think this is DJ. Grinning ear to ear, here to there, back again. "Hey, DJ," Todd shouted. "Glad to see you." Todd was a pushover for smiling faces. Mrs. Jules heard him. She began to write Todd's name on the board under discipline, but when she saw DJ smile, she put down the chalk. "Good morning, DJ," she said. "What are you so happy about?" DJ grinned and shrugged his shoulders. Mrs. Jules smiled. Damon looked at the smile on Mrs. Jules' face and then at Todd's and finally at DJ's. Then Damon smiled too. His smile was almost as big as DJ's. They were best friends. Once they saw the two of them smiling, the rest of the class couldn't help but smile. Rondi had a very cute one due to her 2 missing front teeth. Nobody had an ugly smile. Jason came to school late. He was very upset. But the first thing he saw was Damon's smile, and he felt a little bit better. Then he saw Rondi's toothless grin, and he began to smile a little bit himself. But when he saw the piano on DJ's face, he fell laughing onto the floor. Everybody started to laugh, and Kathy, even Kathy, she hardly ever laughed except for when someone hurt themselves. The whole room seemed to be laughing, not just the people in it. The blackboard chuckled, the ceiling snickered, the desks were jumping up and down, the chairs were slapping one another on the back. The floor was very ticklish. It laughed until the walls turned purple, just like Jason's hair. The waste paper basket started to sing, and all the pencils stood up and danced. Finally, things began to settle down. Mrs. Jules wiped her eyes and said, "TJ, why don't you tell the class why you're so happy? At least let us know what we're laughing about." But DJ just kept on smiling. "Oh, come on, DJ," said Deedee. "Tell us." DJ didn't say a word. He couldn't. His mouth was stretched out of shape. "Let us guess," said Ron. "If we guess right, will you tell us?" DJ nodded his head. His smile began to hurt his ears. Everyone took one guess. Have you been swimming? Is it your birthday? Are you in love? Did you get a green ball? Nobody guessed right. At recess, DJ was still smiling. Louis, the yard teacher, called, "Hey, DJ, come here." They walked to the far corner of the playground where they were alone. "What's up, DJ?" Louis asked. DJ just smiled. "Come on, DJ, you can tell me. Why are you so happy?" DJ looked up at him. He said, "You need a reason to be sad. You don't need a reason to be happy." And that is a great place for us to stop today. Shout out to DJ. You need a reason to be sad. You don't need a reason to be happy. And I feel happy right now, I gotta say, because you are here with me, and we are here at Storytime with Uncle Scotty. I've been your host, Uncle Scotty. Have a wonderful rest of your day, of your night, of your afternoon, of your evening, of your morning, whenever you're watching this. And I will see you super soon. Bye.